In 2014, the world faced horrific climatic disasters. Experts anticipate that the North Pole will be ice-free within 10 years, and that the alpine glaciers will vanish entirely, drastically affecting human life. The GLACIER research station is located in the Austrian Alps at an elevation of 3,500 meters. Currently, an alcoholic technician named Janek, his dog Teeny, and 3 climate scientists live there. Janek awakens to a loud noise after another severe hangover from drinking. One of the scientists, Bifa, repeatedly knocks on his door and requests assistance. Reluctantly, the technician arrives at the main base and turns off the alarm. It turns out that one of the weather stations, located a few hundred meters from the main base, is not working properly. Without it, the scientists cannot track climatic air data, and it must be fixed immediately. Janek dislikes the squad and tries to avoid them, but he is forced to follow their orders. Once outdoors, the technician discovers that his dog Teeny is acting suspiciously and is not responding to his master's command to go feed. Instead, she stares persistently at a single spot above, as if she has seen something in the snow-covered mountains. Later, Janek and researcher Falk finalize the final preparations for their trip into the mountains to repair a malfunctioning station. Falk seeks to learn more about the unpleasant personality of the technician. He has been isolated in the station for more than 5 years, and few people can put up with such difficult living conditions. Janek refuses to reveal the true cause of his captivity in the highlands, claiming that he knows the station and the surrounding area better than anyone. The men and the dog hike high into the mountains, navigating the uneven slopes. Teeny, noticing something, moves in another elevated direction. Janek and the scientist follow the pet and see an unbelievable sight. One of the rocks is covered with a red-colored bacterial plaque. Falk is excited about the strange discovery and decides to collect samples for further examination. Janek hears a muffled wail emanating from the cave. He ignores it and proceeds to repair the transformer. Teeny, on the other hand, is curious and resolves to investigate what is going on inside the cave. She rushes inside and discovers the source of the howling. Among the rocks sits a seriously injured fox, breathing heavily. Something is actively moving in its belly before, unexpectedly, barking from the dog erupts frenetic inside the cave. Janek knocks his head against the transformer in surprise, while Falk slips down the slope. The technician rushes to his pet, seeing a fresh wound on her tummy. The dog stares ahead to where the twisted body of the fox lies. Disturbing noises are heard inside the cave, so Janek decides to take his pet and leave instead of investigating the source of the noise. Back at the main base, the scientists study samples of the unique glacier under a microscope. They discover a biological entity inside with cells that are constantly dividing and growing. Bifa requests that Janek take her to the glacier to collect fresh samples and store them in an airtight container. The technician hates to go up into the mountains at night because there is a rabid fox in the cave. The scientists are dissatisfied with Janek's behavior, believing that he is simply seeing things after drinking too much and that there is no danger in the cave. Nonetheless, they decide to postpone their excursion to the glacier until the next day. The Minister of Ecology, Badek, is expected to arrive at the station in the morning with a committee, and the scientists propose that the remarkable discovery be kept hidden. Janek does not agree because he is required to notify higher authorities about what has occurred. The minister arrives with reporters and Janek's ex-girlfriend Tanya. She is a geologist who was part of a team of scientists working at the Alpine station 3 years ago. Meanwhile, the scientists try to persuade the technician not to inform visitors about what they saw in the cave. This is simply a public relations effort for the minister, and everyone must participate in this political spectacle. Harold administers morphine to Janek so that he falls asleep and does not disturb them. At that point, however, Teeny contacts him by radio and notifies him of her arrival. This event quickly relieves the technician's concerns and the scientist's worries that he will inform his ex-girlfriend about the rabid fox. Tanya informs Janek that she will accompany the minister and reporters to the mountains at dawn to take vivid photographs. The man is eager to meet his former lover and takes more morphine to pass out. Janek wakes up in the middle of the night and hears someone digging in the garbage. Sensing something is amiss, he calls Harold on the radio and asks him to bring him a weapon, but his partner does not hear him. Suddenly, a hideous-looking monster emerges from concealment, scaring the technician. The scientists rush to the sound, and Janek tells everyone to hurry and hide. He describes seeing a hybrid fox with horns on its head. The experts dismiss the man's unusual behavior, believing he is under the influence of opium and alcohol. Janek is certain that he is correct and intends to submit everything to the authorities immediately. A little altercation breaks out between the scientists and the technician. After calming down, Harold attempts to persuade Janek to go to bed and postpone the capture of the mythical fox until the following day. The heartbroken technician takes his injured dog and goes to his lodge. Before falling asleep, Janek tells Harold a story about a hunter who used to dwell nearby. Teeny, who had been gravely wounded, was laying next to his body when he died. Tanya and the technician took in the dog, which they then fostered and fattened all night. In the morning, he calls Tanya by radio and informs her of the dangers that await them along their trip. The girl refuses to believe her ex-boyfriend's illusions and instructs the team to prepare for the ascent. Janek decides to join Falk to the Red Glacier. However, they realize that the red bacterial growth has vanished. The scientist chooses to drill into the block to collect materials while Janek steps aside to use the restroom. One of the rocks begins to move unexpectedly. As a result of moisture, the stone turns out to be a mutant bug that attacks those who disturb it. A disoriented Janek kicks the beetle, which bounces aside and returns to its shell. Meanwhile, the minister and the group travel the trail to the station. Tanya passionately talks to the media about climate change studies. The group pauses on a picturesque slope to take photographs. During the photo shoot, the photographer is bitten by a massive insect whose belly contains dangerous bacteria. Back at the base, the scientists dissect the mutated insect. The creature moves sharply, causing excitement among those present, although Bifa describes it as a vegetative reaction. After analyzing the biomaterials, experts believe that they contain the same microbes found in the Red Glacier. Bifa concludes that the discovered beast is a flea-fox hybrid. This bacterium can recombine and mix diverse organisms' DNA, resulting in a variety of infected animal hybrids. When the Red Glacier melted, the frozen microbes entered the fox alongside the glacial water. The fox's genes then combined with those of the bugs it ate, resulting in a hybrid. Janek wonders what would happen if an animal afflicted with hazardous bacteria bit or slightly injured a human wound. Bifa hypothesizes that such an animal would produce a werewolf-like creature, a human with a jackal head. The technician returns to his den and examines Teeny's wound, where something is starting to sprout. The man approaches Tanya again and attempts to persuade her to adjust her path and avoid the pass, which runs right through the afflicted area. After ending his chat, the man is confronted with a difficult decision. He knows his beloved dog cannot survive and that an agonizing death awaits. He must shoot Teeny to put her out of her suffering, but he hesitates. The dog looks at her owner with pitying eyes, adding to his uncertainty. Tanya chooses to follow her former lover's suggestion and advises that the group modify their course. Tanya informs Janek that the ministers agreed to take a shorter path through the radio. The girl hears Teeny whining in the background and begs Janek to wait for her so they can find another way out. The man is delighted to postpone the execution of his beloved pet. Meanwhile, the mosquito-bitten photographer is feeling worse, but he attributes it to exhaustion. A terrified child is pursued by a mutant eagle near the minister's group. The traveler trips over a rock and falls. The hybrid catches up to the girl, piercing her leg with its massive stinger. Janek is preparing to leave to meet Tanya and the others, sparking a new wave of anger among the scientists. They don't want the technician to inform the minister about the new bacterial threat, as this could provoke panic and unnecessary publicity. Scientists believe they are on the verge of making a groundbreaking scientific discovery that will revolutionize the world. They ask Janek to buy them some time so they can conduct all of the essential research. Bipa is furious because the harsh technician refuses to be persuaded. Janek declares that he is not afraid of the scientist's threats and leaves. On the way, he discovers the body of a mountain goat with an exploded stomach. The man looks around, concerned that the hybrids are moving closer to the station. The bitten photographer develops a serious fever, prompting the group to pause. The bite on his neck expands and pulses. Tanya wants to get the group to the station as quickly as possible, so she instructs them to keep moving. Suddenly, the injured hiker, who somehow fought off the flying mutant, dashes out to them. The girl collapses to the ground and is unable to speak due to panic episodes. The hybrid eagle begins circling the group, hunting for its next victim. The minister's security rushes to defend him and attempts to shoot the raptor, but the bird retreats behind the high mountains. However, the quiet was just momentary as the mutant attacks the guard just a few seconds later. Despite his efforts to beat off the bird, the guy is mortally wounded. The delegation falls into a state of fear. Minister Bodek sobs and crawls up to the deceased security guard to whom she was close. The photographer, having been bitten, rushes to the mountains. Yunek rushes to their help, leading the remaining party to the station. At this point, Harold practices a meeting with high-ranking guests, but he fails to put his charms into action. The panic delegation rushes into the station and immediately shuts themselves inside. They place the injured tourist on a table and treat her wounds with improvised methods. Not everyone gets to the station. One of the reporters, Irene, becomes concerned when she realizes her companion has gone missing. The clergyman firmly pulls her to her senses and assures her that the man will return soon. Tanya asks Yunek to contact for assistance, but the single satellite phone has been snatched by 2 scientists who have gone to the weather station. Harold informs the technician that Falk and Bifa will not return until the morning when the minister's delegation departs. Seeing the negative results of his activities, the scientist attempts to awkwardly excuse himself. Yunek rejects the man's apologies and slaps him for endangering their lives. The minister offers to call for rescue on her phone, but mobile communication does not operate at this altitude. The woman realizes that her deceased security guy had another satellite phone and vents her frustration on the sobbing reporter. Yunek hears his pet barking and is afraid of the horror lurking around the corner. He rushes out into the street and walks slowly towards his cabin, dreading the worst. Tanya, outraged, interrogates Harold about the discovery that the scientists kept from them. Falk and Bifa arrive at the weather station only to learn that they forgot the key at the main base. The scientists blame each other for what transpired for a while before Falk picks the lock. They go inside and Bifa, anticipating, opens the container containing the mutant bug they brought for research. However, the hybrid has been pretending to be dead the entire time and lunges at the scientist's face as soon as she opens the container. In a state of fear, the woman runs out into the street, attempting to free herself from the mutation. Her companion attempts to aid her, but all he can do is beat her over the head with a rock. The mutant beetle eventually peels free from the woman, but after the blows, her face is entirely flattened. Yunek approaches his hurting pet and attempts to soothe him. Tanya, who has already heard from Harold about the mutants, enters the home. Teeny reaches out to her mistress, recognizing her, something Yunek dislikes. Tanya had already departed, leaving the group alone. The man shows his ex-girlfriend the dog's belly, where something is moving. Tanya understands what needs to be done without having to use words. She gives Yunek a syringe containing a deadly injection to put the terminally ill dog to sleep. The man eventually chooses to help his 4-legged friend and put him out of his suffering. The couple is having difficulty dealing with the death of their shared pet. Tanya chooses to tell her ex-boyfriend that she is pregnant by him. But as soon as a glitter of hope comes in Yunek's eyes, the girl informs him that the baby did not survive either. The minister is furious because the scientists did not notify her of the danger. Harold continues to make lame excuses, claiming that the mutant eagle that attacked the group was only an accident. The woman eventually loses her rage and beats the scientist. Yunek and Teeny return to the station. The technician intends to track down the 2 scientists and steal their satellite phone. Tanya attempts to persuade him not to take the risk, but he is adamant. Suddenly, a terrified Falk, who made it to the station alive, bursts in with terrified eyes. He begs to barricade the door through which a mountain goat insect hybrid is attempting to break in. Yunek successfully chases the insect away and latches the door shut. The technician questions Falk about the satellite phone and Bifa. The scientist claims that his partner has the phone, but he does not disclose what he did. He falsely claims that the woman ran into the mountains after sighting a mutant. The monster continues to pound the doors, alarming everyone gathered. The mutant has exceptional strength. His forceful blows rock the station like a house of cards. Minister Bodek yells hysterically at the beast, seeking to scare it off. For a brief moment, the goat calms down. It will soon return, accompanied by its mutant friend, the eagle. The beasts rush inside, and Yunek tries to stop them with his bare hands. The minister intervenes and uses a drill to create a hole in the mutant goat's head. The others hold their breath while watching, then exhale in relief when the lady wins the struggle. The entire firm returns to their senses and recovers from the shock they experienced. Harold has a monologue with himself, speaking pathologically about his pain. Tanya informs the minister that the helicopter scheduled to transport the delegation back would not arrive until noon the next day. However, the rescue crew is unaware that the group is at the research station and that their search could last many hours. One member of the group correctly remarks that the rescue squad has no idea what awaits them in the mountains. They are accustomed to rescue lost climbers and will be unable to face mutants without weapons. Furthermore, the infected hiker may not survive until the morning, necessitating the use of a satellite phone. A safer Tanya and Janek are asked to visit the weather station. The technician pushes Falk to accompany them, refusing to believe his account about Bifa's escape. The others barricade themselves at the base, where the eagle-wounded tourist temporarily awakens. Lifting the cover, the gathering observes a weird movement beneath the skin of her leg. Harold suggests that the girl is likewise sick and that a mutant is currently growing inside her. Everyone panics again and prepares to flee outside. The minister ignores the prevailing hysteria and proposes removing and burning whatever is crawling inside the girl. In disgust, she pulls out the hazardous germ and discards it in the fire. Next, the woman cauterizes the open wound on her leg, causing the girl to scream uncontrollably. Despite its unique character, the operation is successful and the camper survives. On the way, Janek speculates skeptically that the girl cannot be saved and that their efforts are futile. This enrages Tanya, who is still grieving the loss of her pregnant child. Falk attempts to flee, but Janek apprehends him at gunpoint. The minister's group is drinking and toasting to the successful operation when someone starts furiously knocking on the door, asking to be allowed in. Harold unlocks the padlock, and the photographer infected by a hybrid mosquito rushes into the station, his face covered in horrible sores. He runs from person to person in distress, pleading for assistance. More insects begin to hatch from his head, and the station becomes chaotic. Harold unintentionally sets his hand on fire, and it immediately catches fire. He flees outside in a panic, and the minister locks the door. Janek's group arrives at the weather station, but does not find Bipa there. Falk pretends to check the station, while expressing his emotions and reflecting on his actions. He finds a gun on the floor and puts it in his pocket. The group chooses to investigate the Crimson Cave and discovers the disfigured body of the scientist inside. Fox suddenly points a gun at the couple and asks them to hand over the gun. Tanya attempts to trick the scientist, but he hits her in the eye with his buttstock. Falk confronts the unarmed Janek with his rifle. After the girl falls to the ground and screams in pain, a creature appears from the darkness and attacks the scientist. Surprised, he shoots into the air, illuminating the cave with a dazzling flash of light from the signal fire. The fox spider hydrates into the fox's body, eating all of his internal organs. The mutant turns its focus to Tanya and Janek, forcing them to flee. The beast catches up with the technician and attempts to reach his insides, but Tanya slams a rock hammer into its body. Together, they kill the mutant, and in embrace, they find a phone under Bipa's body and use it to dial for aid. When they notice a column of smoke at the main base, they rush over to the others. There, they hear that the girl did not survive the horrific night. The sound of a helicopter, which could save lives, is heard in the air, and the minister's entourage runs happily towards it. Tanya enters Janek's hut and discovers an ugly, tiny hybrid. Everything transpired just as Bipa expected. Janek realizes what is happening and wants to eliminate the terrifying creature, but his girlfriend stops him. She takes the mutant in her arms and declares with a look that she intends to take him with her. The tired company leaves the research station. Tanya and Janek notice that another huge glacier has turned red as they fly higher in the helicopter. The couple hears the soft whimper of the small mutant in the backpack and looks around, terrified of what is to come.